We have all seen it happen. Someone declares that the next 6 months of their life will be different. They set a massive goal, make grand promises, and vow to change. But when you check back a year later, their daily routine remains exactly the same as it was before the declaration. The pattern is highly predictable. You decide to get fit and immediately tell your friends. They praise your ambition. You feel incredible. But within a week, that initial drive vanishes entirely. This flowchart shows why that drive disappears. When you share a goal, the pathway short-circuits. Instead of pushing through friction, your brain receives a premature dopamine reward, the exact chemical hit meant for a finished task. Chronic stagnation signals a hijacked reward system. Your brain is consuming the chemical payoff for a victory you haven't actually earned, removing the biological incentive to move forward. The human brain evolved to avoid risk and conserve energy by locking on to familiar routines. Even if a habit is destructive, your biology prefers it because it is predictable and safe. When you set an alarm for 5 a.m. and a voice tells you to stay in bed, that isn't your true self. That is your autonomic defense mechanism, a hardwired system fighting to maintain your current status quo. Fighting millions of years of evolutionary programming with a sudden burst of motivation is a losing battle. To break the autopilot, you must execute a systematic, bottom-up biological rebuild. Every high-level decision requires physical energy. The brain borrows power from your body's reserves to maintain focus and resist temptation. If you sleep 5 hours a night and run on processed food, those reserves are depleted. You lose the biological resources required to generate willpower before your day has even begun. Exposing yourself to deliberate physical friction, like rigorous exercise, forces your biology to adapt. When you push through physical discomfort, you send a neurological signal that your actions are no longer dictated by momentary feelings. Mental discipline is forged first in the physical body. Without that foundation, the mind lacks the power to sustain change. Once the body is stabilized, you must control the information entering your brain. Constant social media comparison and short-form content flood your system with environmental noise, fracturing your ability to sustain focus. Looking at these neural pathways, you can see the physical impact of that noise. The passive pathway lights up from quick entertainment, but immediately degrades. The active pathway requires friction to spark, but physically thickens and solidifies. Structural change requires repeating unexciting actions. This steady, rhythmic cadence builds a permanent neural pathway. Information without friction is just entertainment. True neural rewiring requires isolating the brain from cheap, constant stimuli to allow these new pathways to settle. With a disciplined brain, you can translate internal control into external habits, specifically managing your finances and acquiring high-value skills. Emotional spending is a common biological trap. People often buy items to patch a dopamine void, trying to purchase a feeling rather than fulfilling an actual need. Saving money and practicing a technical skill for hundreds of hours feels boring to the brain. Yet removing emotional volatility from these decisions is the requirement for building a lasting life infrastructure. Worldly success is the compounding biological result of executing these boring, consistent actions day after day. A 6-month rebuild aims to replace your core self-perception, moving beyond the simple goal of stacking a few new habits onto an old foundation. This model explains why most resolutions fail. In Model A, new actions try to push inward, but bounce off a stubborn core identity. In Model B, the core identity itself expands outward, naturally driving the action rings. Think of a person trying to quit smoking. If they still identify as a smoker who is simply abstaining, their brain will eventually force them back to the habit. External habits inevitably revert if your internal self-perception remains tied to the past. Action must precede feeling. The nervous system requires the physical evidence of the movement before it can trigger the neurochemical state of discipline. Transitioning to a new identity requires a clinical detachment from the comforts and social circles that your old neural pathways still crave. You are starving your old reward system to ensure the new one has the space and resources to take root. For the next 180 days, make every daily decision based strictly on the standards of your future identity. Ignore your past track record and act as if the new identity is already a reality. The success of these 6 months is measured by the total structural replacement of your previous behaviors and self-image. By the end, you aren't just doing different things, you have become a different person.